everybody. This is the Busted Business Bureau. I am your host, Christian Borky. This podcast is produced by the Lincoln Lodge, which is an independent comedy theater in Chicago. If you want to support me or the podcast, consider donating to either the Lincoln Lodge or joining my Patreon at patreon.com/bustedbizbureau. I'm a bartender who has made 8 fucking hours of Monsanto content, so give me a little bit of money as a treat. You're listening to the Monsanto season of my podcast, which is an 8-part deep dive into a company with an unfathomable body count. Speaking of unfathomable body count, I'm joined by Blender Blewett and Amy Doe.
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
You literally wrote that. You read that off of the page.
Yes. I came in ready. Blender Blewett, Amy Doe, how are we doing?
I'm
doing
doing
well.
Hey,
how
it's
we
pretty
doing?
good over here. You know,
Hey,
gagoulash. Yeah.
The title of this episode is Bovine Growth Hormone, but it's also an episode about the FDA. Compelling title, right?
Pretty creative.
I have waxed incredibly poetic about the FDA on this
Oh my
podcast.
God, I'm so glad that's what follows waxed.
Wait, what?
I thought you were going to make an announcement about your body hair on the podcast.
Amy, get a grip.
I could simply have a high vocabulary, Amy. Get used to it.
I know.
Amy got triggered by the word wax.
Because of our conversations earlier. I knew that the days of being romantic about the FDA were going to come to a close.
Now you're just doing it on purpose.
I speak the way I speak, and you two will have to deal with it at some point.
Love is in the air.
If you listened to the Risperdal episode of this podcast, which by the way, did you two listen to that episode?
Yeah.
Do you two actually listen to the podcast?
Yes, of course.
Wow.
That was the one with Dan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I like that one. It was really sad.
You might remember how Dr. Francis Oldham Kelsey's work during the thalidomide days proved the astronomical success of like a taxpayer-funded government regulatory body meant to protect consumers from poison.
Mm-hmm.
It was tangentially referenced in the Risperdal episode. So this Monsanto episode about bovine growth hormone will reflect the disastrous fall from grace of the FDA, and I really want to trace it out. Like, this is going to take place with the lens of Monsanto's relationship with the FDA.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Slay. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to talk about a people's history of milk, the man who fought to
Milk.
establish... Yeah, right? The man who...
Chocolate the milk.
What?
Oh.
Have neither of you seen that poorly drawn spider that was all over Tumblr?
Who possessed Amy today?
I've not seen a poorly drawn spider on Tumblr, no.
And then he shows up and he's like, I would do like some chocolate milk.
Jesus.
What year was this that you were looking at tumblr.com?
Like 2014?
That's okay, that makes
The
sense.
worst time for time. Jesus.
Peak Amy time. I'll show you this photo. You have to know.
Whatever.
Oh, yeah, the famous cultural touchstone.
Yeah.
That is wacky spider who
No,
talks about milk.
literally. No, I swear, please. Like, I'm not alone here. The Tumblr spider.
Is the Tumblr spider in the room right now?
Would you like some chocolate milk?
Anyways, I was going to do a roadmap of the episode. Here's how we're going to do it. A people's history of milk, the man who fought to establish food regulatory rules just in the country, the height of the FDA, and then the bovine growth hormone affair, which also is very intertwined with the FDA. This will probably be a long episode, but I'm just enchanted and obsessed with this story beginning to end. It's one of those things where I went into a research rabbit hole and like...
How long was this one?
I didn't number my pages this time, so I don't know.
No, but like in terms of hours.
Oh, you asked me to like call it like I'm a baseball player calling a home run. I'm going to say an hour 10.
Okay.
We'll see what happens. I'm not going to check my phone. Oops, let me bang on the table. I'm not going to check my phone. I'm not going to...
Oh, I was talking about how long it took you to research this.
Oh, a long time. I spent a lot of time over-caffeinated at the Dollop Coffee store in Chicago.
Shout to Dollop Coffee.
Do you have a go-to order now?
Yeah, I get some sort of variety of like hot tea, either black or green. And then I sit there for like hours and hours. I lose all track of time. And then I walk out incredibly depressed and ready to party. So I'm helped massively in this first section by Deborah Bloom's enchanting book, The Poison Squad. I did only find out about it because I listened to the Behind the Bastards episode on the FDA. And if you listen to that FDA episode, you might know some familiar names. But mine is going to be way different because I'm a girl and I make everything girly. So it's going to be a substantially different telling of the story than the Behind the Bastards one. So we're going to slay. This is going to be a story about Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley. Are we familiar?
No.
That's okay. Nobody knows. I didn't know before the podcast. It's like, you've never heard of him? Oh, I need to show you some pictures on my computer, but Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley was born in 1844. It's actually really important that I show you pictures because we need to see this man.
Harvey Washington Wiley. What do you think he looks like, Blender?
Yeah.
Just from the name alone. Wait, what year was he born again?
1844.
1844. You think he got a stash? I think he's got a stash.
He's got one of those stashes that connects to the sideburns. Yeah.
Oh, it goes up.
Yeah, one of those.
Beard? No beard.
Definitely a beard.
Yeah?
Because he's a man about town.
Okay, these are at 3 different points in his life. We've got freshman in college, 20 years later, 20 years later.
Can you computer enhance, please?
Okay, computer enhance. Actually, no.
The pinch and drag is not working.
So actually, I cannot zoom and enhance. Let's try this again. He's pictured as a freshman. Then as this is going disastrously.
Christian is struggling with technology right now.
Okay, freshman.
Oh, okay.
Hot or not?
Look at this young polio guy.
Mid.
Mid.
Yeah, I'm also
Very
saying that.
mid.
Okay.
It's not doing it for me personally.
The hair is herring.
Huh?
Much more clean shaven than I thought he was going to be.
Let's check him out 20 years later. I think he's hunky in this picture. He's like a
Okay. Very P.T. Barnum.
Oh yeah, he's got some mutton chops. He's got way more meat on him.
Yeah.
And famously,
He looks like he brags about, I'll drink you under the table, good sir.
Ooh, he does look like he talks like that.
Well,
And then this final image is from like 20 years after that, which I think he's just like a charmingly sweet-looking guy.
Sweet old guy.
my wife left me.
We're gonna talk
Sometimes I can still hear her in the wind through the trees.
You two are whack. We're gonna be talking a lot about him and his wife.
If
Actually.
only I invented penicillin years ago.
Penicillin.
So, what's our final verdict? Hot or not?
Not hot.
Mid.
Okay, final verdict is mid.
You think he's hot?
Well, let me tell you more about him because I think this is colored whether I thought he was hot or not. So I'm glad you two had like a blind reaction.
Okay.
So you can maybe come back to an objective reality. So he was born in 1844, which is only about a decade before Monsanto's founder was born, John Francis Queeny, if we remember.
Yes.
Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley did not live an easy life. He started working on his family's farm at 6 years old and spent his life learning 6.
Homeboy can barely walk.
He's developing. Amy held up 6
Amy is
fingers.
holding up 6 fingers, everyone, for all of our listeners.
He's just developing like cognitive skills, motor skills or whatever, and he's working on that farm. He is using
What can a 6-year-old do on a farm?
Excellent question. He is pressing fruits into syrups. I assume he's doing this like a little bit older. I assume when he's 6, he's just like carrying stuff from place to place or whatever.
Yeah.
But he could press fruits into syrup, tend to animals, and like farm. His dad, this is insane, was an Underground Railroad conductor.
Whoa, that's badass.
As in,
So that's not like Harriet Tubman.
it is like Harriet Tubman. Like people came to their house, like when they were trying to get freed.
So like under their farm was literally the Underground Railroad.
Yes.
I
As
didn't
in,
know they had conductors.
yeah, it's just like a cute name for it because the Underground Railroad obviously is not like an actual railroad system, but it's like
It's more of a hiking trail.
exactly. So Southern Kentucky people who escaped slavery would seek out his dad for safe passage. Dr. Wiley was trying to go to college when the Civil War started.
Oh, no.
I hate when that happens. And he went to college for a year before eventually joining up to protect Union Railroad places in Tennessee and Alabama. Just like regular railroad places.
The first ally.
Right? This guy. So we were talking about how John Francis Queeny didn't solve racism in his lifetime.
Now.
Listen, when he was a baby, he didn't solve racism. When this guy was
Strike
a baby,
against him.
He was working on a farm that was part of the Underground Railroad. So I feel like this baby was closer to solving racism.
Yeah.
Wow.
Adjacent.
More of a valiant effort.
Yeah.
Imagine Harriet Tubman comes up to you and says, "We need you." I would. Oh my God.
Do you think she had star power?
I think so. She had to. She's Harriet Tubman.
Yeah, she's fucking Harriet Tubman.
I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, that would be really cool. So he pursued college after the war, and then he went to go for like medicine or whatever. Eventually, he falls into chemistry as his main profession.
This was back when chemicals were exciting. And
Chemicals were new. Yeah. Did we invent pills? I don't know.
Not yet.
We'll talk about the food context of his time, but there's an important thing in 1881. The Indiana State...
He's like 40?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like 40. The Indiana State Board of Health asked Dr. Wiley to perform an analysis on syrups. His subsequent findings that like 90% of syrup was mislabeled, fake, and adulterated.
Oh my goodness.
Because we did not have the FDA at the time. So people were just like adulterating the shit out of food.
Oh,
Classic.
like watering it down?
Yeah, watering it down using just like cheap, fake ingredients and saying it's like natural or made of fruit. So his subsequent findings on that served as a catalyst for the rest of his life's work, trying to get the U.S. to like fucking regulate food on a federal level. This really like radicalizes him, this project. Ultimately, his work is why we have the FDA, which will be a key aspect of this bovine somatotropin story. Bovine somatotropin is bovine growth hormone. You'd think, oh, this is the part where we'll talk about his work and the FDA and the food context, but I need to sidebar for a second. My sidebar is I think this guy is gay.
Okay.
And I have come with evidence that I would like to discuss.
Yes.
Because honestly, that makes him a little hotter to me.
Interesting.
Okay.
So it's time for the sidebar. I've shown you the pictures. Something in his eyes just gives me a fruity vibe. But also, let me read to you an excerpt from his autobiography.
Are you going to post the photos on the Instagram?
Of course I'm posting the photos on the Instagram. Please follow me on the Instagram.
At Busted Biz Bureau.
For context, he had been denied a promotion at Purdue because he, 1, didn't attend church enough, and 2, he was a bachelor. Like, well into his adult life.
Okay. He's
that's
getting
pretty
hotter. He's getting hotter.
Later in life, he gets a job at Northwestern Christian University, and of that experience, he writes the following, quote, "It was a rule at Northwestern that the teachers should take turns conducting morning prayers. I tried putting some phrase or thought into my prayers that would be somewhat off the beaten path." Girl.
What did he say?
I frequently wrote out my prayers and committed them to memory so that I would be sure to follow the right direction. So he's a theater guy. I have forgotten all my prayers since then, as I did not keep any written record of them. But a few years ago, I met at some place a prominent Protestant Episcopalian minister, Reverend Dr. Royce, who came up to me and said the following. "Doctor, I remember you, and you've changed very little. I was one of your pupils at Northwestern Christian University. I looked forward, as all the pupils did, to the mornings when you were to conduct biblical services. You always said something new." He continues, "I remember particularly one phrase in your prayers that stuck with me forcefully. In speaking of the attributes of the deity, you said, quote, 'without parallax or shadow of a change.' But it was not your prayers nor your skill in teaching that commanded my admiration. I thought you had the most beautiful legs of any person I'd ever seen."
For a minister to tell you that you've got good legs.
And for you to reproduce that conversation in your autobiography for no reason? Are we getting a little fruitier?
It's a little fruity.
Okay, I'm glad we're at least landing on a little fruity.
Yeah.
By 1900, Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley was 56 and a bachelor, which, I mean, like, doesn't make you gay, but I feel like with all this context, I feel like, you know.
Yes.
He's, in my opinion, not ugly, as we've established, but he does...
He's not ugly.
He's not.
Yeah.
He writes extensively in his book, which I should not have spent so much time reading. I did not need to read it, but I was just enchanted. He spends a lot of time talking about men. He got a German neighbor of his to lend him $500 for like a trip or something.
Interesting.
And at that time, that's a lot of money.
That is so much money.
He just says it like it's nothing. Like, oh yeah, this guy lent me $500 and I went on my travels to blah, 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 blah. What? Okay, that was not in my notes, but I just needed to say. When he was again in his 50s, he notices a 21-year-old librarian at the place he was working at. He immediately, in air quotes, fell in love and courted her, which was a weird age gap even at the time, because again, he's 56, she's 21.
Yeah.
Sidebar for I think his wife is also gay.
That click.
After he proposed, she sent him the following, because she doesn't immediately say yes when he proposes. Quote, "What worries me most of all is I'm not happier. I've always pictured to myself that love would be consuming and overwhelming in its joy, and I'm on the verge of tears. What is the matter with me, do you think?" And then this is like back to the writer writing about her. "She was painfully aware of the great age difference, of her mother's staunch disapproval, and most of all, her own ambition to be independent and self-sustaining. She's a huge suffragette, is her thing."
Okay.
Quote, Browning's line, so she's writing again, Browning's line about the best is yet to be comes into my mind, but this hobgoblin thought keeps popping up. Hobgoblin thought keeps popping up, and it is that I'm sacrificing my ideals, however childish they may be, to like be with you. Later that month, she called it off. Quote, "I'm only full of reproach for myself and for my weakness and lack of womanliness in not knowing my own mind and for letting you even this week harbor any hope of me sharing your future life. But oh, please believe it is the same honesty in me that before you admired, which now makes me tell you this before it's too late. She said she lacked the sacred, sweet, overpowering feeling that should accompany real love. And so goodbye, she concluded. Goodbye with respect and the sincerest regards. I'm always yours, Anna. I get like Joe March Little Women vibes, which famously the first lesbian.
First one ever.
She invented being a lesbian. So they eventually do get married, and they're both incredibly tied up in their work. For him, it's chemistry and food safety, and for her, it's, again, being a fucking suffragette. Those are the ideals that she was afraid of giving up when she was married to him. But while they were married, he was working for the government in food safety. She was protesting the government for not letting women vote, and she was arrested in 1917, picketing in front of the White House.
Whoa.
When asked why he would, like, let his wife get jailed, he said in response that he lives his life defending his ideas and principles, and she should too. What are we thinking?
Yeah, it does.
The evidence
People
follows.
having radically correct ideals back then.
And it gives me, like, each a beard for each other. You know, like,
100%.
they're both just mostly dedicated to their work.
Yeah.
They do wind up having 2 kids, but to me it seems like, I don't know. I'm going to keep reading. He also made substantial allies in the cookbook community as a way of disseminating...
Cookbooks?
Uh-huh.
Because food.
Because food. As a way of disseminating his burgeoning food information to more people. All 3 of his sisters went to college, and it's mentioned many times that he just respects women's intelligence, which is...
I respect women.
Listen, that doesn't make someone gay, but
Respecting women.
and
Makes him a little gay.
It is
right?
it is generally a circle. The Venn diagram.
of like respect women-ers and gay people.
Oh, I don't know about that.
We were both going the same way.
I was like, oh, oh, ooh.
I stand corrected.
I
You ever been to
moonwalk out.
sidetrack on a Friday?
No.
Yeah,
There's a
oh,
reason. Oh, the 3 gay people in Chicago who listen to this podcast are going to love that. So, also, I feel like I need to mention the cookbook community was this, like, writers for cookbooks were putting more information about, like, food chemistry in their books, despite publishers' warnings that, like, women weren't going to get it. And so he got this, like, monthly... He was, like, writing monthly for this one cookbook thing that was
Like a
distributed...
columnist?
Yes, thank you. I
Okay.
could not think of the word. That was distributed to, like, mostly housewives. And he was not afraid to be like, here's food chemistry. Like, here's this about food safety. This is dangerous. This is the thing about nutrition that you should know. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think a columnist in a cookbook thing that's sent out monthly...
Okay.
All of this is in Indiana?
All of this is in... Oh, where does he live at this time?
Well, they said the White House.
Yeah. So I think it's around Virginia, I would assume. Because he works for the government at, like, a... I actually have no idea where most of this is taking place. It takes place over many places in his life. So sidebar is done. Let's go back to the beginning. In his diary in college, when he's still just that skinny little twink that he used to be.
Oh my God.
He writes the following, quote, I cannot climb to heaven to pull down immortality, but I can help achieve a longer life full of health and happiness and hope. I find so many things that I do not know as I pursue my own studies. My own profession is still a wilderness. Let's talk about the wilderness, shall we? This is the brief history of milk and other foodstuffs. All right, are we ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. This is going to get so gross.
Hell yeah.
Burgeoning technological innovations of the 19th century, including canning, pasteurizing, refrigeration, allowed people to transport food over longer and longer distances. As a result, added preservatives also boomed in the 1800s because you need to preserve the food to ship it a long way. We could first pasteurize milk in like 1899, but we
Whoa.
did not make it even vaguely federally regulated until like 1930. Like not
So people's pasteurized would be different?
No, nobody was pasteurizing milk. They would still they would pursue alternate forms of preserving it, which wound up being, it's going to get so gross. And
Milk is already kind of gross.
milk is already very gross.
I'm an almond milk person.
Ooh, yeah. I think I'm just a water girl.
In your cereal?
I don't have cereal.
Oh, okay.
I eat like a stalk of celery for breakfast and then have 8 cups of tea, and that's my day.
Jesus.
You gotta
was-
eat, girl.
No, that was a joke. I eat way more than that. But I just like don't eat cereal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my
Missing
thing.
out.
Well,
Wait, didn't we all have a text conversation where we talked about our favorite cereals?
Yes, and I participated and said my one that I enjoyed as a child, which was, I enjoyed, it was like chocolate Fruity Pebbles, and I went over to my best friend's house, and her mom was a dentist, and her mom like would add sugar to the cereal.
Hell yeah.
To the already sugary cereal?
Yes.
Hell yeah. That's gangster shit.
I was like, is this normal? And then I started normalizing it, and I was like, I'm like spitting out.
Fuck yeah. Ain't nobody need teeth. You be alright.
She was creating another customer. I think.
That's what big dentists want you to think.
She was playing the long game. So because it was not a requirement to pasteurize milk at the time, and because you're listening to this podcast, I can imagine you know where this is going, businesses would cut every single cost imaginable so as to provide the biggest profit margin. This leads to so many mass poisonings.
Oh no.
Here's like a more detailed history of the milk. And mind you, this entire story, the FDA does not even properly exist until 1930, so everything you're about to hear is technically legal, as in there's no law forbidding it.
Wild Wild West.
Yeah. In the UK, this is not in my notes, but in the UK, there was this like big candy poisoning, right? Like the things they used to color the candy, it was like arsenic, and like 20 kids died. Okay, and they get the guy who manufactured the candy, they put him in jail, and then they like start looking through their laws, and they're like, "There's nothing saying he can't do that."
Oh my
Damn.
God.
So then they had to just like let him go. That's in the UK, not in the US, but like it's not that far off from what we were dealing with too.
Right.
In the 1800s, there was a guy who figured out that an incredibly small dose of formaldehyde can preserve milk for longer. Formaldehyde is a naturally occurring preservative. Fruits that last longer have formaldehyde, like we do eat trace amounts of it in natural stuff all the time. It's why we use it in such high doses to preserve human corpses, and it can be ingested in small amounts. But of course, the second it's introduced, businesses go crazy just like dunking formaldehyde into milk, trying to preserve it for longer. Completely unregulated. Additionally, before the advent of federal food regulation, business owners adulterated the fuck out of any given product. In the case of milk, it was regularly diluted with water. The resulting color meant that they had to put some kinds of chalk in it to make it white. Oh. And then they usually skim the cream off so that, and then use like other substances to make it seem creamy. In one case, liquefied cow brains.
No!
To mimic the cream. It's just like so many steps to get to, it's just milk. Like just give milk to people.
Milk.
Just fucking boil it. Just pasteurize that shit at that point. This is so much effort. I could go on in gruesome detail, but suffice to say, many people kept dying, specifically poor children who like drink more milk and don't have access to better milk. So it was mostly poor children. This would become the centerpiece of Harvey Wiley's advocacy. Like he would specifically say these lack of regulations hurt poor people. Anyways, in 1900,
milk.
Whoa!
Oh my God!
And he's gay too. Wait.
Whoa! Give me some red string, quick!
You're so real for that. In 1900, a concerned Indiana family brought
Indiana?
Yeah, Indiana's back. And this is going to be so gross. Brought a pint of their milk to a medical lab. They found that their milk, when placed on a table undisturbed, was moving.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Lord Jesus.
Wasn't it? One would say it was wriggling. The scientists that they brought the milk to discovered that it was diluted with what was standing water. And if you know anything about standing water, you are not supposed to drink that shit.
No.
It was the perfect breeding ground for horseworms.
No.
Who had gotten so big and strong by eating all of the milk that was in and the bullshit in the bottle. So this was mentioned in the Behind the Bastards episode, and Matt Lieb geniusly referred to it as milkshake. Because it's shaking.
I love that you're laughing. This is the worst thing I've ever heard. As somebody who famously hates worms.
As someone who loves milkshakes.
As someone who loves horses.
We are all disgusting. The three genders are furious.
Worm haters, horse lovers, milkshake lovers. Pick one. Which one are you? You can only be one.
I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight joker. Needless needless to say, there's more I could say about this wildcat era. Again, technological innovation is not meeting our laws. So we're in this period where you can just do that, and people do, and so many people die, right? Like, milk was one of the number one reasons why kids died in this era. And people kept drinking it. So there's, again, more I could say about it. We were coloring candy with poison, feeding cows completely unnutritious barley that had been previously used to make alcohol. Like, we are in the most wild fucking era of U.S. food. A long series of political and social events sort of followed this era. It's not what the episode's about. I'll paint it with an incredibly broad stroke and just say that Wiley's subsequent activism, the frequent poisonings of the country, the Spanish-American War happening, we kept sending soldiers beef that was so rotten that they kept dying from the beef.
Oh, no, not dying from the beef, but for the bullets.
Why'd you say it like a stand-up thing? So people had heard about these soldiers dying from all this beef. It was called the embalmed beef scandal.
Embalmed?
Yeah, because they were also using formaldehyde in beef. And so as a joke, someone called, like a journalist or whatever, called it the embalmed beef scandal, and then that stuck. So you can Wikipedia that shit. So that happens. The Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle. Are we familiar?
Yes.
So that comes out in 1906.
That's the one about the meat packing.
Yeah, Chicago meat packing. Chicago. And
So gross. That book's so gross.
it's nasty.
It's so bad.
All of this provided the path towards passing the Meat Inspection Act of 1906, and this laid the groundwork for the eventual founding of the FDA. I know I shouldn't be talking about this because it's not that important to mention, but Deborah Bloom's book is called The Poison Squad because the most memorable part of Wiley's work was getting this group of young male volunteers to literally ingest poison so that we could actually have science about it. Because before,
Slay.
one of the reasons why... No! You're so real. One of the reasons why we couldn't really sue food manufacturers is because the onus was on the government to prove that this was like scientifically unnutritious or dangerous, and we just didn't have any of that data. So Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley was like, let me get this group of dudes. I will feed them 3 meals a day, and they're volunteers, most of whom were poor and just like wanted 3 meals a day so they could save money.
Yeah.
But I will get them to eat, so there's a control group that will eat food, and then the rest will eat food that's like laced with borax or laced with whatever that we keep putting in our food and not studying. So that is what he does. It's called the Poison Squad because the girlies were eating poison.
I was him being gay makes us iconic. I'm sorry.
Right?
It just does.
It just makes
These
it
boys
also
are
better.
dying to hang.
Did he name it the Poison Squad?
No, I think Deborah Bloom did. Don't quote me on that. Like, the book is 600 pages long. I was skipping around. But Wiley and I wrote it in bold, his boys. Took a lot
Wiley
of
and the Boys is a great band name.
They took a lot of shit in order to protect consumers and the future. And that story is so touching to me that he spent his life mad about it and did this really incredible body of work to protect people that he doesn't know, including so some of the poisons were like borax, salicylic acid, and saccharin. Do you remember?
Yes, the sweetener that was developed by
The devil.
It was popularized by John Francis Queenie
Yes,
at Monsanto.
yes.
They have lifelong beef, these two.
Oh.
Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley and John Francis Queenie.
a lifelong rivalry.
Queenie versus Wiley?
Dare I say they have embalmed beef? That wasn't in my notes. That was improv, baby.
And printed.
So, yeah, once again, Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley was like, I don't think we should be putting saccharin in everything. It was like in vegetables. Like,
God
people were just
damn.
putting it in fucking everything.
How do you get saccharin in a vegetable?
I think it was like sprinkled on so as to preserve it. Do not quote me on that. I genuinely
Yes,
don't know.
nicely. Sorry, I had to do it.
Now, we just started recording today. We're already at this level of
It's
incomprehensible.
because we've all worked a full day before this.
I worked a whole day having rosé at brunch. Like,
Listen, you did all this beforehand too.
and Dr. Wiley and John Francis Queenie were on opposite ends of a government scandal over saccharin safety, which Wiley insisted was not safe in large doses because many people were having it in large doses without realizing because it was in everything. And there's this long-standing Coca-Cola lawsuit that Monsanto is also wrapped in that Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley was like called in on all the time. And he was like, we need to stop all this saccharin. Monsanto was like, nar.
Nar, clear.
Or no.
Also, Dr. Wiley caught beef with, I wrote beef in here several times and didn't realize how funny that was going to be, with basically every fucking president that he wound up working for. In fact, his whole family did, because once again, his wife went to jail for protesting the government.
Shells.
Like, yeah. So, his work, all of that political events led to the founding of the FDA, which is just, in its early years, a massive success. It really proves that we can do something good. You will never catch me saying this about anything else from the 1930s, but like the FDA slays.
Early FDA.
It is a massively successful venture that generally provided a lot of societal good. An important tool that will help us later. One of the first achievements of the FDA is the requirement of companies to provide scientific data to prove that their products are safe. So before, nobody was conducting studies, and at 1930, this was like a good idea to say, hey, the company, the onus is on you to provide these scientific studies. Can you imagine where that's going to go, though?
Yeah, I think that the companies are going to be like, oh yeah, it's safe. Let me just delete this part and then scratch this part out and then tear
Carry
this
the
part
two.
out and then okay, now you can have it. It's safe, I promise.
That you stole it right out of my notes.
Yeah, it's written like that.
Now I have to delete half of what I wrote. In 1930, this was a fabulous idea, but again, as you can imagine, having the company itself provide its own efficacy data will spiral out of control. And I don't know why I wrote, mind you, Monsanto was already producing saccharin and DDT at this point. Guess you know that.
DDT is not drugs.
It is not drugs. It's an insecticide. I will again return to
It's drug for bug that make bug die. Drug?
Do you think they like it before they die? Like they die on a high?
I don't know. I've never talked to a bug.
Ignorant. Like, get out more.
Jesus Christ.
I know.
The process of regulating products was as such in the 1950s FDA. That's where we're skipping to. A company would submit its own scientific studies to the FDA to review it. It would get passed along several bureaucratic channels and scientific channels before it was ultimately approved to be sold in the United States. So in the 50s, there's this company called Gruntal, which this... Gruntal.
Okay.
Gruntal. It's a German company that...
Gruntal.
It's staffed in huge part with like former Nazis. It manufactures this one sleeping aid called thalidomide.
Okay.
And I'm returning this story even though it doesn't really have to do with Monsanto or... Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley, but I just wanted to say, like, this is going to be the massive success of the FDA. The key marketing pitch of thalidomide was that it was a great sleeping pill that was safe for people who are currently pregnant. To make a long motherfucking story short, their application for approval lands on the desk of Dr. Frances Oldham Kelsey, who's a woman known for her rigorous and detailed work style. Since the main pitch of the drug was that it was in fact safe to take while pregnant, that's what she focuses on when she's like reviewing the science and the data or whatever. It's striking to me that she is in fact a woman. Like, I wonder how far this would have gotten if she wasn't.
Right.
Which I know, I don't want to sound gender essentialist, but like, it's very special to me. She's a very special figure in my life. So she's an incredibly detail-oriented person. She asks for more evidence from Gruntal because she finds the data lacking. Her boss, who is a man, stands at her side, despite Gruntal's pressure to quickly approve the drug. As it turns out, thalidomide is anti-angiogenic. It inhibits the growth of new blood vessels, and when taken during pregnancy, completely shunts the development of key appendages. So for the best case scenarios, thalidomide complications include children born like without arms and legs. Many children die. Millions of expectant parents around the world had like taken this drug. A limited amount in the U.S. had taken it for reasons I don't really understand, but it would have been a massive national thing were it not for Dr. Frances Oldham Kelsey. So this is widely regarded as like a W for the FDA. She's like a well-known figure at the time. And it's striking that she was able to do this, was a celebrated figure in her time, and it's like the last time we see a Titanic victory like this.
This is a weirdly progressive era.
Right?
Yeah.
I think I'm highlighting figures who are weirdly progressive at the time. I think it kind of in part proves, right, that when people say, oh, they were of their time, it's like, well, no, there were other people doing work like this.
Yeah.
So, part 2-ish has to do with the 80s and 90s. Between the reign of Dr. Kelsey and the time period we're discussing for bovine growth hormone, we will return to it, there is a key restructuring of the FDA as a direct result of the AIDS crisis. As you can imagine, a nationwide epidemic requiring a quick medical intervention meant that current rigorous, long-standing research phases for the FDA sort of needed to be circumvented. Consequently, the amount of time for the approval phase shrinks dramatically, creating a sort of dangerous precedent for non-AIDS drugs-related companies. You dig?
Yeah.
AIDS is not 100% why this happens the way it does, though. Like, that's a part of it. But in reality, the revolving door of Monsanto employees and government employees is almost exclusively why the story is going to play out the way it does.
Okay.
We'll be saying a lot of characters and names in this, but that's really what I want you to like keep in mind.
Yeah.
The headline is the revolving door is why this is going to be so fucked up. Monsanto's warmongering with the U.S. government provided a cozy relationship wherein the free exchange of employees was perfunctory as fuck. Why did I write that in the script? I must have been feeling so silly at the dollop coffee. How are we doing so far? We're following along?
Yeah.
All right, so all of that is the historical context with which we will be entering the bovine somatotropin affair.
Okay. So the FDA at the beginning is really great, but then eventually starts to get corrupted by the revolving door of Monsanto employees, which then empowers the government to continue to make bad decisions.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the political context of the time, like of the FDA approval phase shrinking, is also an important like little detail.
Yeah.
Let's introduce ourselves to a new character. It's going to be another doctor. Lots of doctors in this episode.
Ooh.
From Marie Monique Robbins' The World According to Monsanto.
Woo!
Slay. Quote, Dr. Richard Burroughs is a veterinarian with a degree from Cornell who started out with a private practice in New York, where his parents had a dairy herd. I adore cows, he said with a smile that lit up his 60-year-old face. That's why I chose this profession.
Oh, he loves cows.
I like cows.
He likes cows.
But how was his French?
It's never discussed.
Damn.
That must have been, it was terrible.
Cold.
How are his legs?
Never mentioned either. Sad.
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 Oh, I like a good man's leg. Nice meaty leg.
Given the context of what we know. Lord.
Dr. Richard Burroughs was hired by the FDA in 1979. He was notably the only person on his approval-y team that was deeply familiar with cows. Kinds of cow diseases, proper cow nutrition. This guy's here for the cows.
Moo.
He personally owns
Why'd you not moo?
Moo.
No.
Okay.
Hey, not everything has to land with everybody.
Okay.
There's probably people mooing at home.
I can't with you today.
Today,
Blue and Amy are fighting.
fisticuffs.
He personally owns 2 cows, Dr. Richard Burroughs. That he loves.
He's obsessed.
He loves cows. So when Monsanto's application for bovine somatotropin landed on his desk a few years into the job, his working life at the FDA quickly turned into a descent into hell.
No.
Yeah, that sentence did not come out right, and I'm not doing it again. Quote, this is from Marie Monique Robin again. When I met him in New York on July 21st, 2006, nearly 20 years after the events he was describing, Dr. Richard Burroughs still found it hard to talk about. It's too painful, he said tensely every time I mentioned it. It feels as though the ground is giving way beneath me all over again, and I'm going to be swallowed up. It's still hard today to recognize that I was fired from the FDA because I opposed the marketing of a product I considered dangerous, but that was my job.
Oh.
All right.
He loves cows like I love black people.
Aw. A lot.
Yeah. Wow, good for him.
So let's talk about what is bovine somatotropin. Any guesses from the girls? What are we thinking?
Well, it's a hormone.
Yeah.
I think is it given to cows to make, is it given to milk cows or to meat cows?
Ooh, I like
That's
that
a good question.
you're
Okay.
keying in on it. Milk cows.
Oh. Is it to make them make more milk?
Nailed it. Ding, ding, ding.
Damn.
Could not have been any more on the nose.
I had
Good
never,
guess.
it took me until adulthood to realize that only pregnant cows produce milk.
Yeah.
And that is, more than anything, what made me realize how unethical the milk industry is. Because that just means that, the cows just always have to be pregnant.
Yeah. It's not even a good source of calcium, I mean.
And so another question that I have before we go into this is, if you're giving this hormone to cows when they're pregnant, what happens to the calves?
Okay. Well, excellent question. The point of it is that you don't give it to them when they're pregnant. We'll discuss.
Okay.
Bovine somatotropin, otherwise known as bovine growth hormone or RBST. If I say any of those terms, it's all just functionally the same
I've
thing.
heard of RBST. That's the thing
Yeah.
that's on the label. That's like made from cows without
Yep.
treatment with RBST.
It's
And the
a-
lowercase r, and then BST is capitalized.
You fucking nailed it.
People who read, fucking.
I love reading. I
Fucking
read the
nerds.
label on everything.
Ooh.
Jesus.
I play a game when I go when I go shopping, I look up, like, if I'm getting almond milk or, like, something from a company, I just look up, like, that company controversy. When it's, like, one of these woo-woo companies, it's like, cage-free eggs or whatever, and it's always so dark.
I gotta buy you two some fiction books. Or something, 'cause-
I read fiction. I just also
No.
like reading nutrition facts.
It was a drug that was being manufactured by both Monsanto and this other company in the 80s, and it's a transgenic hormone. If you listen to the last episode, you may remember the discussion of transgenic crops. This is like a logical extension of it. The hormone that's produced by cows after calving allows them to produce milk. If they're injected with it, even when they're not pregnant, the theory goes, they'll be able to produce a fuck ton more milk year-round regardless of the cycle.
Oh, so this is a hormone that makes not pregnant cows make milk because it's telling their body you just had a baby, even if they didn't.
Yes, I think.
Whoa.
Now, let's be clear. I'm not a science communicator, and I want to put a massive grain of salt that I could be wrong. This is my understanding of it. But
Okay.
I'm pretty sure you're meant to give it to cows who are not pregnant, so as to artificially, like, induce that
Yeah.
production of hormone
That makes sense.
that would make the milk.
That makes sense to me.
So while there are several other companies in the 80s working on this, Monsanto will wind up being the only company that gets FDA approval. Spoiler.
Oh no.
So when we
I
talk
wonder why.
When we talk about the horrors beyond our comprehension invented by Monsanto, I want to neatly file this one into the Rolodex as well. It's astonishing, though, how much they go hand in hand with, like, Eli Lilly, Dow Chemical, and all those guys, like, producing things that are beyond our comprehension. But, like, so they're the only one doing RBST, but all those other companies are doing also horrific things at the same time.
Yeah.
So, once again, building on the last episode, when it comes to bovine growth hormone, imagine the amount more milk farmers could, like, yield. Imagine the time saved. Imagine the profits for small farmers just by giving their cows a little
Monsanto
boost.
spokesperson.
Right? That's the selling point. And much like genetically modified crops, it can toggle better genes in cows.
Yeah.
You know how,
Okay.
like, for GMOs, we're supposed to toggle this being ripe for longer or whatever. So
And this toggles make more milk.
exactly. So you obviously know where this is going, but this particular details of the story are significantly different than the last episode. I'll let Dr. Richard Burrows explain it. Quote, FDA rules require that we analyze the data within 90 days. This is in fact a way for companies to discourage detailed examination. They send in tons of paper, hoping that you will merely skim through it. I very quickly understood that the data was intended only to demonstrate that RBGH effectively boosted milk production. The scientists working for Monsanto paid no attention to crucial questions. What did it mean physiologically for cows to produce milk beyond their natural capacity? How must they be fed so that they'll survive this exploit? What diseases might it cause? They hadn't even thought that the cows were certainly going to develop mastitis, an inflammation of the udders, which is a common pathology in herds with high production levels. So it's like a naturally occurring disease. When the cow is just too good at producing milk, it gets that, like, udder infection.
Like the cat I know.
Tell us about the cat you know.
There's a cat I know who recently got a new kitten as a friend. And the kitten, unfortunately, was separated from the mother a little too early and started trying to nurse on the cat I know, who is a boy cat. The situation got so bad that, unfortunately, the cat I know is now bleeding from the nips and had to go to the vet.
And what does the cat have to do now?
Probably wear a shirt for a while.
Cat shirt, cat shirt.
Cat shirt.
Catcher. You got a cat with a shirt on.
The cat's
little
okay.
bitch.
The cat's doing okay.
I think I'm gonna make cat shirt merch.
Catcher.
Like, I don't want mugs, I don't want magnets, I want to make cat shirts.
Jesus
Like
Christ.
shirts for cats?
Yeah.
That's a busted business bureau.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Thank you. I just thought of it now.
You should make little pet bandanas too.
Oh,
So that they can go for walks and stuff.
that's improv, baby. So, I want to again emphasize
Poop
that Dr.
bags.
Burrows,
Monsanto branded poop bags.
that's genius. Dr. Burrows is the only one on his team with this specific cow-related expertise. So the questions he's asking are from the point of view of somebody who's worked extensively with cows.
And loves cows.
Cares
Loves
really
cows.
cares a lot if the cows are comfortable.
Loves cows like I love black people. TM.
Why do you keep saying that? Why did you trademark that?
It was a quick and easy copyright process. It reminds me so much of Dr. Kelsey, who on the thalidomide thing. Dr. Burrows flags the application and tells Monsanto that they need to test through several calving cycles, which would take about 3 more years before finally receiving approval. Specifically, his boss writes a letter to Monsanto in 1988 saying that the FDA found their data insufficient. And that letter from 1988 marked the beginning of the end of Dr. Richard Burrows' career at the FDA.
No.
Once again, from Maria Monique Robin. Suddenly, I was put on the sidelines. I was denied access to the data I myself had asked for, and finally the file was completely taken away from me. And then on November 3rd, 1989, my boss showed me the door. It was all over for me.
What?
You were fired? Yes, for incompetence, he said quietly.
What?
No. Yeah.
Oh.
And he loves cows so much.
Oh, God. That must be... That... Yeah, that's awful.
And he still, 20 years later, was still saying it's, still painful for me to talk about.
I mean, yeah, because that's just not right.
What the? Wow.
I'm going to flatten this part of the story a little bit, but he literally sues the FDA for unlawful dismissal, and then he wins.
Hell yeah.
W. He was then rehired at the FDA. However, quote, I was shifted to the swine division. I don't know anything about pigs.
Oh no! That's like if I got fired. They was like, "Well, now you're gonna have to protect Germans." I was like, "I don't like Germans as much as I like black people."
I don't know anything about them.
No.
Never had a schnitzel in my life. Is that German? I don't know.
It sounds German.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, listen, we don't know
That's all
anything
the
about
same. That's all the same.
At any moment, I could have made a serious mistake, so I decided to resign. It was a very dark period. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I was ruined because the litigation had cost a lot, and I didn't have a job.
Damn.
Fortunately, there were my wife and 2 children.
Oh.
That's really sweet, and also very responsible of him to be like, "Well, pigs ain't like cows. I ain't gonna mess around with them."
Yeah, like he literally quit so that
The pigs could... Fuck.
This person better be in heaven.
His life, this is not in my notes, but his life just went so poorly after that. Because then, for some unholy reason, the people in his... maybe I shouldn't be discussing this because it's clearly painful for him too, but it was public news. And since this public news came out, he's completely disappeared off the internet. And so I want to respect that about him. But there were people who had called the cops on the 2 cows on his dairy farm saying they were really underfed and abused. And he was like, the one is sick with a disease, which is why he's lightweight, and I'm trying to treat him for this disease. The other one's just old as shit. She's old. So then when he goes to the police station, again, not in my notes, it's just living in my brain, and now you 2 have to listen to this. He goes to the police station to sign some, or to receive papers to go to court for animal abuse for his cows that he loves so much. When he's there, the cops ask him to sign something. And he says, I work for the FDA, I'm not signing anything. And a policeman had gotten into an altercation with him and took his thumb and shoved him against the wall. And he had to do, it tore several ligaments in his thumb, had to do physical therapy. And, goes to court, has the cows taken away from him.
No.
Anyways. And this is all after he was fired from the FDA. That's kind of where
They took his cows.
they took the cows.
This man is definitely not living currently.
He is actually.
He is?
According to one of those creepy websites that looks up people's address or phone number or whatever. I think he's 81. I won't say where he lives, but I think he's 81 and still alive.
Do we crowdsource to get him 2 cows?
Aww.
I want him to have cows before he dies.
I'm sure that he finds a place to visit.
Yeah, or he might have more. Who knows?
Fucked up, man.
Right? That is so sad. It makes me so depressed to think about. So it's not
On
really
the long list of things the police have done badly.
Those people who
Boy.
called the cops probably had never seen an old cow in their life.
Exactly. Cows be old.
Cows
and
be
sick.
Yeah. Just like people. We're old and sick.
That's
Sorry about such a dark tangent.
Detour.
Abolish the
Thank you.
police.
I know we spent a lot of time last episode thinking about this, but I've only just started to emotionally grasp the true power of like spending all of your money either suing for injustice or being sued unjustly. The legal system here is so boring and yet so powerful. It's overwhelming. So I hope I've made it clear in the podcast how emotionally devastating it is to lose all of that control, all autonomy over your finances, and basically control over the way you're perceived in public and the rest of your life. It's just terrifying. Marie Monique Robin then asks him if he thinks Monsanto deceived the FDA, to which he says, deceived is not the right word. That would mean it happened without their knowledge. No. The agency closed its eyes to disturbing data because it wanted to protect the company's interests by encouraging the marketing of transgenic hormones as quickly as possible. So what is it that they closed their eyes to? What horrors are going to befall us? Great questions. This is kind of three-pronged. Here's the fucked upness about RBST. First of all, it is in fact very harmful to cows. Here's one summary of the Monsanto data. This is from, again, Marie Monique Robin. Quote, the organs and glands of the injected animals, thyroid, liver, heart, kidneys, ovaries, and so on, were much larger than in the control group, whereas the total weight of these cows when slaughtered was significantly lower. For example, the right ovary was on average 44% heavier in the group having received 5 times a dose than in the control group. The treated cows had significant reproductive problems, whereas 93% of the control group were successfully inseminated during the period, only 52% of the injected groups were. From one injected animal to another, the hormone level in the blood varied considerably, the highest being 1,000 times higher than the recorded in the control group.
Oh my goodness.
Here's another analysis of the Monsanto data from David Abuliafa's review in a Pace Law journal. Quote, an insert Monsanto provides to veterinarians describes 21% potential side effects that might be expected. It's been reported that RBST use in cows increases the likelihood of cystic ovaries, reproductive disorder, weight loss, fever, twisted stomachs, digestive disorders, lesions, lacerations of the knees and feet, spontaneous abortions, and even death. Cows may experience decreased immune functions, higher rates of stress, internal bleeding, swelling at the injection site, enlargement of internal organs, increased intolerance to heat, higher rates of metabolic disease.
Oh.
God, that was an impressive on a first read. The use of RBST doubled the likelihood of hoof rot and uterine infections, and treated cows experience retained placentas and ketosis at 3 or 4 times the normal rate.
Jeez.
God, these cows are going through it.
So imagine Dr. Richard Burroughs like reading this about cows, or like reading any data and like inferring this stuff about cows. Ugh, that makes me sad. So while they claim that all cows like all the time experience stuff like this, like, you know, a cow could just randomly have a sickness, the data is significantly statistically more significant in Monsanto's cows, even though they were only studied for one lactation period of 40 weeks. As you can imagine, this depression medication-esque list of side effects leaves cows down pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, side tangent, for the inevitable how thread of thought, like how did this happen? An astonishingly short-sighted aspect of the U.S. Food Consumption Safety Act from the 30s and its subsequent scope documents and amendments is the following. You cannot give an animal anything that's immediately threatening to its health, right? So if you're injecting cows with BGH and they immediately drop dead, you can't do that. However, if you give a cow something carcinogenic, cancer-causing in the long term, that is fine so long as the substance doesn't appear in the end product.
Oh, no.
The thinking being, the cow's not going to get old and die of cancer. And so if it doesn't appear in significant amounts in like the meat you get from slaughtering the cow, then that's fine.
What? Wow.
Ergo, if the meat is not detectably carcinogenic, it's fine to feed cows all the poison you want because that's not immediately debilitating.
And then we can eat that meat and totally be fine.
Now, I know that none of us are scientists, but it obviously raises a lot there's questions.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that the resulting substance isn't long-term carcinogenic in humans?
Like, if you haven't studied it.
And it's hard to get long-term human studies on anything, especially food, because it's like we eat
it's like, how do you control for that? It would be miserable to trap a human being in a room and tell them to eat the same thing until they die.
Exactly. Even Harvey's Boys, like, that was a hard thing. They did it for, like, a couple weeks at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
So the answer is that we will never really know because humans who get cancer are, of course, not able to attribute it to one thing. But also, when it comes to biotechnology, in an effort to encourage more innovation and growth, generally biotechnology is not as heavily scrutinized as it should be vis-a-vis carcinogenic properties because transgenic stuff is considered natural and therefore safe. Again, it's that same line of thinking. Nothing's being added. You're just editing the DNA, so we just kind of assume it's fine. Anyways, how are we doing?
Jesus.
Now, we're a long way away from worm milk.
We are.
Why did you have to remind me about the worm milk?
Worm milk was disgusting.
So as a result of developing the infections mentioned earlier, the cows then need to be treated with antibiotics, which then does end up in the milk and us.
Damn.
Here's a little bit of science you might remember from last episode. When you make an herbicide, for example, the way that evolution works is that there's always some plant that accidentally is born with a gene that's resistant to the herbicide. It's just true of nature. It's been a fact of life. It's the reason why we have yet to eliminate cockroaches from the planet, because there's always cockroaches that are accidentally born resistant to whatever shit we come up with. And they slay.
Oh, and antibiotics.
Yeah, you know where this is going.
Yeah.
There's a set number who can simply tolerate pesticide, then they breed, and then we wind up with 100% of cockroaches who can resist that specific thing, which means we have to make new pesticides. Much to that vein, when you blast a bunch of bacteria with antibiotics, eventually you will get bacteria that is resistant to it. In fact, in 1992, two researchers wrote in Science, quote, "After a century of decline in the United States, tuberculosis is increasing. 1/3 of the cases tested in a New York City survey in 91 were resistant to one or more drugs. In the same year, the CDC found that 13,000 hospital patients in the country had died from infections caused by bacteria resistant to the antibiotics doctors had prescribed them."
Oh my gosh.
Which is just a weird new horror beyond our comprehension. That is way more than just Monsanto. This is, it's not just a them thing.
Yeah.
But RBST is certainly a factor in that.
Totally, yeah.
It's kind of a straight line. The thread is straight between RBST and antibiotic resistance.
Yeah, definitely.
So, obviously, there's other stuff at play. But yeah, they market the fuck out of this drug to farmers. And so when their cows fall ill, they're treated with whatever fucking antibiotics, which does absolutely, it winds up our food supply. It's not the sexiest, most bombshell revelation, but it's still another way that Monsanto is just in our bloodstreams.
Right.
Making sense?
If you drink milk, then it's in you.
The FDA should really be more fastidious when it comes to the approval of RBST. I have no idea if I said that word right. I know that the word is accurately used here, but I have no idea if I pronounced it right.
Fastidious?
Ah, yeah. That was fastidious. Even as early as 1983, we were having public conversations about antibiotics in our food supply. And additionally, this is not my original thought, but this drug doesn't do anything to treat cows. It doesn't help them with anything. It just helps them make more milk, which is solely for the economic benefit of farmers and drug makers.
Right, yeah.
So it's for no reason we are making your life worse. Anyways, here's a quote that I really appreciate from from David's paper. Quote, "The exercise of a higher standard of care to guard against remote and harmful events is not a surrender to paranoia or irrational fear. It's merely a conservative undertaking which an agency charged with the protection of human health should routinely engage in." Mm-hmm. It's slay. So while the episode has been coming pretty hard on the FDA and will continue to do so, I find it appropriate right here to mention that Dr. Burroughs is not the last dude fighting the good fight at the FDA. Mm-hmm. Even today, there's people who care a lot about the job and actually do efforts to care for public health and safety. So an anonymous FDA employee sent all of Monsanto's raw data to an investigative journalist.
Whoa.
Yar. We won't really talk about it. Wanted to mention that. Additionally, to Dr. Burroughs' colleagues' credit, right after his dismissal, a bunch of anonymous FDA employees get a group letter going. They send it to the FDA commissioner and the Government Accountability Office, saying in effect, quote, "We approve," I put quote, but it's my quote. They're "We approved this shit too fast, and we should look into if that was ethical to do." Mm-hmm. So they looked into 3 employees. I'll tell you about them in order from least bad to most bad. Time to friggin' name names.
Okay.
Number 1 is Susan Setchin.
Susan.
The FDA had posted an article in Science about the safety of bovine somatotropin. Were you laughing at Amy just saying Susan? In anticipation of it hitting the market. It was causing a stir before it was officially approved in 93, so they were getting ahead of it. Mm-hmm. One of the authors of this article, written by the FDA, is Susan Setchin, who was formerly a student of a guy who'd been paid by Monsanto to test bovine growth hormone at Cornell.
Oh.
So she
paid
learned
by Monsanto?
Yes.
Oh
so she learned science from a guy who skews very pro bovine growth hormone. Then she writes an article for the FDA being it's no big deal.
Boo.
Kind of yikes. Ultimately, perhaps forgivable if it was the only one. Because that's kind of the weakest connection here. Number 2 is Margaret Miller.
Margaret.
The girls are causing trouble this episode. Margaret Miller had worked for Monsanto between 1985 and 1989 before ultimately working for the FDA. And she was a key part of the approval for the drug. So you might ask, like, what was her job at Monsanto? Was she like a receptionist or something? Nope, she was fucking studying bovine somatotropin.
Oh,
God dang.
my God.
What was her role in the approval process? First of all, she edited the approved amount of antibiotics that are allowed in milk.
No. No, she did not.
This is from the anonymous letter that was sent to the FDA, or sent to the FDA commissioner in the government. Quote, she picked an arbitrary and scientifically unsupported number of 1 part per million being the allowable amount of antimicrobial in milk permitted without any consumer safety testing.
Oh my God. She just said, okay, 1.
And it used to be like 1 part per 100 million, I'm pretty sure.
Oh my God.
Like, it was just an insane jump. This is for an antimicrobial. A cow could be treated with several antibiotics, and each one would be permitted in the milk at a level of 1 part per million without additional consumer safety testing.
No.
Effects of the different antibiotics could be additive, and this is not taken into account. 1 part per million per antimicrobial is fucking nuts.
Oh my God. 1 part per million what?
Like of antimicrobials. 1 part per million referring of in the milk.
Yes. Yes.
There's lots of little parts in it.
Yeah.
I think it's molecules is what they're referring to.
Oh, okay.
Like the molecules that made
I was thinking like milliliters or something.
No.
Okay.
It's molecules.
So it's like a chemistry term then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay. I was thinking like actual measurements. Not that chemistry stuff isn't actual measurements.
You just call chemistry fake on this podcast.
I know. Oh my God. I'm showing my true colors right now.
Yourselves.
From the Huffington Post, quote, the FDA scientists claim that 90% of bovine growth hormone in milk was destroyed during pasteurization, so it wouldn't matter even if there had been a substantial increase. But they failed to mention that the researchers pasteurized the milk 120 times longer than normal.
No.
And even then, only destroyed 19% of the hormone.
No.
So then they spiked the milk with powdered hormone, 146 times the naturally occurring levels, heated the mixture 120 times longer than normal, and used under those artificial conditions, they were able to destroy 90% of the hormone.
What? What? That's not even a study.
It's just making shit up as we go along, I guess.
Oh my God.
They say that science isn't an art. They're wrong.
It's finger painting at this point.
And our final one, I don't know if you two remember this name, Michael Taylor. Anything?
I don't think so.
From episode 1, quote, Taylor first entered the FDA before becoming a lawyer for Monsanto. He then returned to the FDA in 1991 and was later moved to the USDA. In both roles, he dealt with U.S. policy on how to regulate GM foods. Then he went back to Monsanto as a vice president of public policy until 2000. And then in 2010, he again is appointed as a senior advisor to the FDA.
Oh my God. When will it stop? Wife swap.
His main part in the story is about labeling. He worked for a third-party legal firm, one of his main clients being Monsanto.
Is this about the labeling that we were talking about in episode 1? That they hit? No, that was the Obama stuff, that they hid it behind a barcode.
Yes.
Okay, this is different.
This is about the labels that you were talking about earlier, the RBST-free stuff.
Yes.
He has a big part in that. He defends their right to label shit whatever they want it to be labeled. He was key in making it impossible for companies to label their milk RBST free without a caveat saying that BST actually isn't bad.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because the thinking was if you put RBST free on your milk, you're implying, I guess, that BST is something that consumers should avoid.
Right.
And so his work was saying, like, that is unfair to people who have RBST in their milk.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So anyways, RBST is FDA approved.
That's like having an I Love New York t-shirt, and then when you turn around, there's an asterisk that says, I love the other 49 states too.
That was a good comparison. I enjoyed that.
Fun.
The new shirt.
Yeah, new shirt.
We're coming up with several shirt ideas in this podcast. I feel like we could really lean in.
Yeah. I feel like that would be great also on a cat.
Cat shirt time.
Cat shirt.
So this also, at the same time, goes to Canada for approval, and I'm going to flatten what happens in Canada because we just simply don't have the time. But a very brave group of, like, Canadian equivalent FDA people testified before their government that RBST is simply not safe for animals, and Canada should not approve it. Canada bans it. Here's other countries that have banned it.
Oh?
The entire EU.
Oh.
Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Argentina. We're kind of... we're very much in the minority for approving
Yeah.
See?
No wonder milk in Japan tasted so weird, like different.
it. You think it has a taste effect?
I don't know. Maybe I was just drinking weirder milk over there. Actually, I was drinking milk over there.
Proper milk?
Yeah.
When? Like recently?
No.
Ah, I see.
Like when I was there.
Bluewood, what's your opinion on milk? Are you a milk drinker?
I do drink. Well, I don't drink milk. I have it in things, and I cook a lot. So sometimes you use milk or like heavy cream for something.
You participate with milk.
Yeah, participate with milk. So I use a lot of milk for cooking and shit. But
Are you a good cook? Do you identify as a good
I'm a
cook?
fantastic chef.
Nice.
Well, then why have you never cooked for us?
Oh, because one of y'all is vegetarian. I keep forgetting which one.
Who do you think it is?
Pretty sure it's Christian.
I keep forgetting which one.
Because we always eat together, so I always forget which one of us.
I eat meat.
I've taken Bluewood to so many like vegetarian restaurants that they have very politely sat through.
First of all, I do like some vegetarian cuisines. It's just not all of them are meant for me.
And that's okay. No.
We gotta. Oh my gosh. No, we'll talk about it.
No,
after.
say it. I
Oh,
want to
okay.
hear now.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well, remember we were talking about brunch at Ethiopian Diamond?
Yes.
We should do that.
We
Yeah, do that.
should go to Ethiopian Diamond.
That's
God,
true.
we've been talking about it for so long. We got to do
Literally,
it.
months.
All right. Maybe for Sunday's recording, we can go.
Ooh, okay.
Uh-oh.
Inside look, y'all are getting the backstage pass of what happens in our group chat.
There needs to be one long emoji-laden text about like Queen Elizabeth's death, and then you get a real peek into the group chat. So the FDA, even as of April,
Do you want to release that to your Patreon subscribers?
Please do. Please.
I will. Okay.
Please. It's so good.
So, subscribe to my Patreon if you want exclusive bonus content, including group chat messages. The FDA, even as of April 2022, has not only like approved, obviously, RBST, but has extensively defended it and has on their website like a list of reasons why it's safe,
Ugh.
links to studies proving it's safety. Blah,
I
blah,
don't
blah.
like that they're doubling down because their corporate bestie needs it for the money.
But RBST sort of fell out of market favor around like 2014, and it's definitely not the biggest Monsanto has contributed to public horrors. But if you really read Maria Nick Robbins' chapters on it, the science is like astonishing. I'm done with the science part though because I don't really understand it, and I want to end the story sort of introducing the topic of the next episode. So our final piece of bovine growth hormone it was close.
Yeah, I was like, it's almost
Bovine
a
growth
word.
hormone?
Uh-oh, queen.
Bovine growth daemon?
Oh, don't want to leave you out. Bovine growth hormone. Ooh.
So this is the story of two journalists who tried to cover RBST. Jane Anchor and Steve Wilson. Fundamentally so 90s.
Whoa.
Like sort of side by side, arms crossed.
Can I?
You go for it. Arms crossed journalists.
Oh,
They're here to tell stories.
Really?
Yeah, they are 3/4 turned towards each other.
Let's go.
She's wearing an ascot.
Ooh, you know that's how it's
about
real.
it. So here is the Cliff Notes version of sort of what happens to them. I believe they're separated now, but they used to be this classic husband and wife investigative journalist duo that took to Florida.
Kind of kooky.
I hope they still do it while divorced.
They do.
They took to Florida to report on the devastating effects of RBST on cows. And just weeks away from publishing the horrific videos, their news station was bought out by Fox. And suddenly they're told that they have to edit significantly their report.
No.
After 80 plus rewrites, the news company asks if they want to just drop the story, stop being investigative reporters, and just work as consultants for their same salary. Sort of like this...
Hush money.
Hush money. Steve asks for this offer in writing, which Jane at the time did not understand. But they decline and are fired. But then Steve has the offer in writing of like, do you want to be fake
Yeah,
employees?
yeah.
So they sue the station for unlawful dismissal. Unlike Dr. Burroughs' success, if you can even call it that, they are initially found to be in the right, but they lose on appeal.
What?
For lawyer things I don't understand. And part of the appeal was they had to pay Fox News lawyers' fees, which was like in the millions of dollars.
No.
Christ.
And another appeal or whatever was filed, and that was dropped, but functionally, neither one of them could work in journalism ever again after this. Their savings had been wiped out by these expansive lawsuits. All of this is to say, not only does Monsanto exert power over its own products, but also kind of on the communications around its products.
Yeah.
Because you have to think, I don't really know the connection between Fox News and Monsanto. Like,
I was going to ask, yeah.
Would just only assume it's something like Fox is generally uninterested in reporting like this because something, they're cozy or something. This is just bad for other reasons.
Yeah.
So that is to say, Monsanto did not explicitly write a thing to anybody saying take this down.
Yeah.
It's just awfully convenient.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Like the timing is wild too.
Right. All of this is to say the next episode's going to be about Monsanto's control over communications. So we don't have that linkage here, but we will next episode on what Monsanto is able to control about the public whatever, you know. Monsanto's struggling PR team. The rent is due for those girlies.
Because like that's basically, I mean, I don't know about you, Blender, but that's how I, walked into this entire saga. It's like not really knowing a lot.
Yeah.
And like just being a product of Monsanto's hardworking, God-loving PR team.
That PR team is, they're built. All right. Anyways, thank you everyone for listening to, why did I put that there? I put my final thing somewhere I didn't mean to put it. I was going to say thanks for listening to the Busted Business Bureau. Well, thank you anyway.
Yeah, thank you anyway.
I have more things to say. So, Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley, this is going to be like my conclusion wrap-up part.
Okay.
Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley died in 1930. The year
R.I.P.
before he died, he published this like hateful ass book.
Burn book.
I love
It was
that.
a burn book as fuck. It was demanding more government action for food safety, and like all of his colleagues who read it were like, God, this is wild, dude. And then he published his autobiography in 1930, presumably because he knew he was sort of at death's door and he wanted to publish something a little better. He quite literally
I can't go out like this.
But he died mad about it. And
to die mad. He haunts somewhere.
Oh, yeah. He haunts the fuck out of wherever the Poison Squad took place. Here's how his wife handled his funeral. Quote, she had asked the minister to base his final tribute on a sermon in St. Paul's words in the second Gospel of Timothy. And the words are, I have fought a good fight. I've finished my course. I have kept the faith. And to me, I find that pretty special because it's hard to remember after 5 hours of Monsanto content that there are people out there who are fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
We always, I think it's sometimes easy to fall cynical about this sort of thing because there's all these people who can exert enormous power and influence over the world. But there's also
sue you into oblivion and leave you penniless and sad.
Yeah. Dr. Wiley would be even madder that Monsanto still exists today. Someone that he had already had beef with. But I hope he'd be happy that he's receiving positive coverage on a comedy podcast.
Yes! We love you!
So... Also, my, epilogue on Dr. Burroughs was that he's living and he's 81, which I said earlier. If he is randomly listening to this podcast, I want him to know that I also appreciate his contribution to science. And he's also fighting the good fight, as was Francis Oldham Kelsey and, plenty of other people at the FDA. The anonymous employees, the people in Canada who, denied it.
Yeah.
So there's people out there fighting the good fight. And that's what I wanted to end on.
Yeah, it's like that Mr. Rogers quote about looking for the helpers.
Can you reproduce the quote? Or paraphrase?
Yeah, it was something how whenever he was a kid and he would see something scary on the news, his mom would always tell him to look for the helpers because there's always people who are helping.
Aww.
Even if the coverage and the things that are happening are really sad.
Oh, that's such a good quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember the helpers. Look for the helpers.
Yes.
Here's my sources. They're sitting on the table.
Just a piece of paper that says...
This is a mirror.
Fuck Blender.
I'm liking this running gag. That's why I don't have to print out the sources, but I've been doing it just because I enjoy the gag. All right, final thoughts from you two before we get the fuck out of here.
I'm glad I don't drink cow's milk anymore.
Ooh.
I think oat milk goes great in hot chocolate. So shout out to them oats.
Shout out to oats. All right, thanks everyone for listening to the Busted Business Bureau. Follow Blender on everything on all the social medias at Blender Bluid. Leave Amy alone. Follow me on all social medias. And also, if you do like this podcast, please tell your friends. Like, that is just excellent.
Why not?
Snitch.
Yeah, snitch.
Snitch about this podcast to your friends and your family.
Someone posted a TikTok today, someone who I don't know, that was like recommending my podcast. I know, I felt so powerful. Wow. So cool. So thank you. I apologize for not remembering your username.
Didn't that TikTok label you as not cringe?
Yes, I was labeled not cringe.
Congratulations. I know you've been waiting for this.
Class.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
I'd like to thank the Academy. All right, everybody. See you next episode. This has been episode, 5 of Monsanto.
It's 4, right?
This is 5.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So, yeah. Tune in next episode. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Deuces.